Hello, everybody. I'm Scott Freymuller here again with Shelly Netco. We're at Dave Pratt's Star Worldwide Network studio with our friends. And when I came in here today, what were you guys talking about?
Spanx.
Spanx. They're talking about Spanx, which brought me to a whole nother level of thought. And then we talked about
Curiosity.
people's boobs and
Yes.
the stuff hanging on the back of their arms and like how to hide that and all that kind of stuff. So on the way in here, Shelly and I had a quick conversation on the phone about what we were going to talk about. And just the dialogue when I walked in here between you two ladies
Perfect.
brought us to the topic of not giving a fuck because clearly, you know what I mean?
Clearly, no one in this room right now gives a fuck.
Nobody gives a fuck,
Nobody
right?
gives a
So,
No.
so as vulgar and as, I guess, extreme as that sounds, that's what we're going to talk about today. But it also relates to mental health, like everything on the show does, right?
Absolutely.
And that also goes into when the inside matches the outside, right?
Yes.
So we'll get started with that. So Shelly, you might as well start.
Oh, I'm starting.
Well, because I
I'm
mean,
your
you picked
subject.
the title. You picked the title of the show.
I did pick the title.
Yeah. So
Well, what's funny is as Robin and I were discussing this, and it was women wearing Spanx, and now Spanx available for men, and all this kind of thing. And it was basically wearing this, whatever it is, so that you don't look like you look, so that you think that other people will be more attracted to you. Which
Right.
is fine because I do things that I feel like I want to look better and whatnot. But it's the concept of should you give a fuck, right? And Mark Manson has his book, The Subtle Art of Not Giving a Fuck. But there's a difference between just like not giving a fuck about anything and not caring about the things that you've been held hostage to.
agreed. I also think though too, like that lets go of control,
Yes.
right? You start letting go of control and let things happen, and you let your relationships go where they need to go, and you stop like caring so much about what people think, and you're actually just being yourself, to where like the inside matches the outside. And so one of the reasons why I was thinking about that, and we got on that subject, is I went and I saw a counselor, right? Because I do all the time, anyways, right? Like this mental health thing for me is never going to stop. Like me doing the work is going to be doing the work, not I did my work, right? So
It's like breathing. It's constant.
it's like working out and being healthy and whatever.
Yes.
Hey, I had this idea. Is this you know what I mean? Like I'm working through things with somebody who's like a third party
Right.
instead of somebody who might have like an interest or can benefit from it or whatever, right? Anyway, so it was the inside matching the outside, and when your inside matches your outside, meaning like who you are really truly and truthful is the same person you're portraying to the world. That's happiness, right? Because then you don't have to lie, you don't have to hide anything. It helps with like depression, it helps with anger, it helps with all kinds of stuff if you're real, right? And then just being real, like telling the truth.
Right.
And that's hard to friggin'
Well,
do.
you're coming from your values and your authenticity and owning who you are and your
Right.
truth versus running around living that perception that you want other people to believe.
Right.
And that's where people are amiss, I guess.
And it takes away that like need or want to be part of a group. Because I've played that game before too. Like I want people to like me, and I want you invite people to do stuff, and like, hey, you want to go hang out with me? You want to come play with my sandbox? You know what I mean, or whatever. And then you start realizing like when you don't give a fuck, then those people fall away, and you actually have genuine relationships. You actually have people in your life that are genuine, that really are there for just the good, I guess.
You're attracting those people who really know you.
Right.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And then you're not playing a game. You don't have to like be someone you're not to be part of a group. Right?
Right.
And I think that's, we talked about this show, and it's been 7 months.
7 months.
And we think about how much we've done, but then also like how much we've changed and evolved in 7 months.
Yes.
And I'm not going to say it's because of the show, but it's a lot because of it. I mean, it's because like we're self-reflection. We bring all these experts in here, psychotherapists and counselors and all these great people that share their story, and we're like, holy shit. And then you start relating to that. And then you start getting feedback. And then we start talking about what we're going to do next. And then, so that's a growth thing.
Right. And we can't not do this and have these discussions and talk to these people and continue with our own therapies and what we're doing and not grow, I think, or not change your perspective because it's a constant reflection. It's a constant introspection, right?
Right. Yeah. It's like every day.
Every day.
And so here's what changed, right? Like when we talk about not giving a fuck, it comes to, and that's not a negative thing. That's not saying like I don't care about the world, I don't care about people. That's just, I think the point of that is to truly be yourself, like we've already said 10 times, right? that looks like this in the dating world. We talk about that all the time. Just being
This is
truthful
about
with-
relationships.
It is about but being truthful about who you really are. Like me, I'm dating. And so I used to be scared to say that. Like, I used to be scared to say, hey man, I'm dating. Like I meet somebody and I'm like, I'm dating. Let's just be clear and open right here. I'm dating and I'm dating other people. And if that's a problem, then you know what I mean? I want you to know up front. Like, this is who I am. This is who I'm going to be. And when I find that person that I totally am into and I give them my heart, then that's forever. Right? But that now means so much more to me than it did before. Because before, I was somewhat scared to be alone. Actually, fuck it. I was scared to be alone. So I would have people in my life so that I could have somebody there while I was looking for someone else. And that's what most people do.
A lot of people do.
Right? And,
Yes.
and then I'm thinking now, I'm like, that's total bullshit. Like, you can't do that. Because I'm not telling the truth.
When did it shift? When you went on your trip?
Yeah, or shortly after. You know, and then the other thing too is like, if I tell the truth, then it's almost like it makes the people around me more transparent.
Right.
Because it makes them feel safe and then they can share.
Well, or maybe since you've understood some new things about yourself, say you came back from the trip and you see things differently, then you see everyone else differently too.
Right. And then you realize like what, you know, if you have pain or you have a breakup or whatever's going on in your life or divorce or a loss or whatever, you start realizing like, what's that pain really about? Because a lot of times it's not about what you think it's about. It's about like abandonment or loneliness or self-esteem or one of those things, you know, that we talked about, 100 different things on this show, 51 different shows.
Right.
And you start realizing like, oh shit, that's not really what that's about.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And it gives you like this power because you actually stop missing what you think, like most of what you miss is a fantasy anyways.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
I saw something the other day that said what we lack in our childhood and what we're chasing with maybe primary caregiver or whatever is what becomes prevalent in our relationships. That becomes the biggest problem that we're trying to seek out, solve, whatever it is. So that becomes like the big shining light, you know, the red flag on the charging bull if we don't do the work. If we
Right.
don't work on ourselves, if
you
we
don't
don't
continue to
become
do the work.
evolved. Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think doing the work doesn't necessarily mean like going to a counselor. You can do the work with a partner,
Sure.
right? But it's that constant communication and that constant trust and that environment of safety to be who you are. And if you don't feel that, that's where it comes into like intuition or, you know, trusting yourself and trusting your intuition and being like, dude, something's not right. I don't know what it is, but something's not right.
Well, and I think what happens with some people is they feel like something's not right, but they don't know what that means because something's not been right their whole life. So they just keep rolling with it.
Yeah.
You know, they
Yeah.
ignore it, roll with it, and keep doing whatever they're doing as far as their, you know, numbing, whether it's drinking or social media or whatever it is, maybe surround themselves with friends, staying busy, staying surrounded by noise. And that keeps them from having to deal with the what's not right.
Right. Right. And, you know, it's funny, like, I don't know what to say. I had this like really good thought and I just forgot it.
Oh.
It'll come back though.
Yeah,
It's
I'm
okay.
sure it will because
Yeah,
we
yeah, it
talked
always
about
does.
that one before, the numbing.
Well, that was my thought. Is that is part of that dating thing? It's alcohol. It's you know, keeping yourself busy all the time, not being real, not being genuine. That's all numbing.
Right.
Social media.
Right.
It's all numbing.
Right.
Right.
And we talked about before, like the difference in, like you said, you're dating now. You're just dating around, right? There's a difference between that versus the serial dating thing, which is what we talked about too, which is you have a long-term relationship, you break up, or you know whatever, something happens, and then immediately within a week, it's like you attach to somebody and you're in love and you're in this long-term thing, and it doesn't. It's like the same thing.
Right.
You know, you're in each other's back pocket, and there's no autonomy, and there's, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it's like,
Yeah.
it's just, it's interesting that when people do that and they don't give themselves time for recovery after something that where there is a breakup, and they don't look at themselves, they don't look within. And so they take all that stuff and pack it up in a nice suitcase and go to the next relationship.
And then unzip that shit. And let it all
Unzip
fall
that
out.
shit and boom,
Well,
there it is.
we've all done
Yeah.
it. I've done it, right? And finally, like, I actually don't really want a girlfriend. I don't want a girlfriend. I want to have fun. Like, I'm having a blast. I'm dating. I'm going out. I go to the lake. I go camping. But I don't need to have somebody there anymore. It just gives you so much more power to choose, if that makes sense, right?
Yeah.
And then if I don't dig somebody, I'm like, meh, I don't really like you.
Well, it's easier for you to see it too.
Yeah.
Because of the not giving a fuck.
I think it actually, it's happy. It's like joy. Like, I'm having fun because I don't have to hide anything. I don't have to be like, oh, I'm totally into you. But I kind of like this girl over here too. I'm just not going to tell you. Right? I'm like, dude, I fucking like a couple girls right now. And you know what I mean? I'm not going to like hang out with them all the time. But until something sticks, like, I'm going to enjoy my life. You know?
And
Almost
you
like
should.
when you guys did the show when I was on the road, and you guys were talking about platonic friendships. And those are healthy relationships when you can just be completely and totally honest.
Right.
Right? And then you also realize too, and here's an example. So I'm seeing this girl. She's much younger. And when I say much younger, not like 20, but enough younger to where it would be like, you know, a young kid, and she's like, hey, I want to make you my boyfriend. I'm like, no, you're not. I'm not gonna be your boyfriend. Like, we can hang out and have fun, but I'm not gonna be your boyfriend, right? And then when you're honest with them and you tell them like truly where you're at and like, hey, you're not gonna change me right now. Like, I am who I am, and I'm gonna enjoy my life. Then they get pissed and they're like, oh, I'm not gonna give you attention anymore. Well, I'm not gonna hang out with you anymore. And you're like, dude, I never told you anything different. You're wanting to believe and control something. And then when you can't control it or manipulate it, then you get pissed. Okay, cool. Well, then that's time to move on, right? Maybe we'll be friends, maybe we won't, but whatever. I don't really give a fuck.
Yeah.
That's where the I don't give a fuck comes in.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? And it's not in a rude way to hurt anybody, but it's that's that like level of confidence where you're like, dude, whatever, man. I'm gonna be me, and if you don't like it, that's totally cool. Like,
well,
you know
but
what
the
I mean?
same thing's true with men. I mean, there are just people who think that they have the power to change someone else. They can barely even look at themselves and change themselves and things that need
It's
work
control,
done.
which then creates anger.
Yeah, it's control. It's not change.
Right.
Yeah.
Or like, you know, you go on a date with somebody, and they'll be honest with you. Like, I went out on a date with a girl a couple weeks ago, and she's like, hey, you know, you're super cool, but you're just not my deal. You're just too crazy. I'm like, okay, cool. Thanks for telling me. Like, maybe we'll be pals. But I didn't get mad.
Right.
In my mind, I'm thinking like, oh my gosh, that's such a great gift to be able to know that. And then you're not screwing around. Like, what if I really like her and she's like, meh? You know what I mean? Like, God, that's cool, right? What a gift that is.
That's the way it
Instead
should
of
be.
playing games.
Yeah.
You know? But then also waiting for what you really want and what you really like. And my 5 things, my list, is still my list. It hasn't changed.
Good.
Right?
Well,
But-
it's your values.
Right. And then, but there's so many other things, of course, that go with that.
Right.
But realizing like who you are, not what you do, is another key thing too.
Right.
Right? Like, people ask the question all the time. They're like, "What do you do?" Like, oh, you're like, you know what? Go F yourself. The question is, who are you?
Right.
Right? We have that question all the time. And I got a call yesterday from a guy that I used to work with, and he's like, "Man, you know, I got hurt. I'm leaving my profession or whatever." And he's like, "I'm not sure who I am." And I was like, "Wow, that's powerful." I go, I totally know what you're talking about, but that's not like, your profession doesn't identify who you are.
Well,
right?
but that's why it's in the top 3 for men. You know, losing their job is the top 3 fears.
Yeah.
So losing their dad, losing their job, losing their hair.
Right.
So-
and yeah, whatever.
But I mean, it's a real thing, and for men especially, because that's how they identify who they are.
Right. Well, right and wrong too, right? Like, how could you identify who you are by, like, how many hairs you have on your lid? And you know what I'm saying?
I
know.
mean job.
Yeah.
I'm
I
talking
get it.
about like what they do.
But
is
think
how they
about that.
identify.
That made me think, right? This conversation made me think. I'm like, okay, if you lose your relationship, some people identify themselves based on their relationship, and that's also super
All of it.
unhealthy,
Absolutely.
right? And I'm not saying, you know, this is necessarily my opinion. This is fact. Like, this isn't a, you know, like, this is a pretty common belief or
Right.
idea or concept or whatever.
Well, some people don't know who they are without it because they don't have that understanding before they go into it,
Right.
and then they over-attach to it, and without having anything that fulfills them individually, then of course they get lost in codependence. And
Yeah.
relationships are set up for codependence unless you understand that drawing a line and a boundary around yourself and having autonomy is important and valuable.
Yeah. But think about, I think about that. Say codependence. You have a relationship, and you keep this attitude of like, hey, I'm going to be me, and the inside's going to match the outside. And you guys were talking about, like how your boobs look like when your arms are back, and like, that kind of
Robin.
shit. And that's cool.
It was just a conversation.
Like, no,
It was just a
But what I'm
conversation.
saying is like that conversation, those types of conversations are so healthy to have with like your partner, right? Like, babe, I'm 51 and my balls sag when I go to the bathroom. You know what I'm saying? Like shit like that, right? Like stuff
I knew
like
he was
that.
gonna go
You-
there.
I mean,
Yeah,
well,
we knew the
I mean,
balls were
of
coming
course it's
out.
yeah. But no, I'm just
Based
saying.
on
I'm
the
not saying
sub-
my.
based
That was
on
a
the
hypothetical. I'm
subject.
not saying my balls. I'm just saying a
Oh
hypothetical.
God, here we go.
You just
Jesus.
did though.
I did.
Yeah,
Yeah,
you
you
did.
just
You
did.
said
Whatever.
yours.
So the point is like
Delete.
having that transparent. We're not editing shit.
I know.
Having that transparent
I'm fully aware.
conversation and that belief, and then you said you watched a podcast on polyamory and all that kind of stuff, and really it's about
And being monogamish.
and having, but really it's not about sex always. It's about like having an autonomy and doing what you want to do. But
Yeah.
people think it's about sex, and not all the time it is about
Yeah,
sex.
because a lot of couples, from what I listen to, couples think that it's about sex, but really it's just a sense of curiosity because they've reached a stagnation, a point of stagnation in the relationship.
Right.
So of course their first thought is, well, I guess I need to have sex with someone else. And just because that's who we are as a society,
Right.
And they stifle their curiosity.
But there's also like that whole concept in, you say who we are as a society. I mean, like internet dating, like there's options coming out of your wazoo.
Right.
Right.
Everyone's running around lying to each other.
Exactly. And that's powerful. That's interesting, right? Like, I think that's so interesting. And then when you stop lying, then holy shit, like you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It changes the whole entire dynamic of what's really up.
Right.
Here's a thing too. We'll go back to my balls in a minute, but here's a thing.
And Robin's boobs.
No, here's a thing about that it's like sagging. That we could talk about sagging and just cup it all together. You know what I mean? Like
Sure.
cup it
Go
all
for it.
together. Right. So, anyways,
Do you want to draw a picture for?
well, no. So here's another thing about not giving a fuck, right? Like if you put all this together, like we wrote just a sample of the 51 shows we did.
Right.
And if we start putting some of these concepts together, right, then you realize like, oh, wow, if I have a list of 5 things and then I can be secure being alone and you don't meet 2 or 3 of the 5 things that I want, then I could say to you, hey, you know what? You're not really the person for me because I really like to be adventurous. And I might be starting to get old, which I want to live to be 200, so I'm only a quarter of the way there. But you start getting a little bit older and you start, maybe some people are less active. So adventurous would be like a huge thing for me.
Sure.
Or fit would be a huge thing for me, right?
Right.
But having that ability to be okay being by yourself, you're okay walking away from that or just being friends with that and being totally alone until maybe you meet somebody else down the road.
Right.
Right? You don't have to have like a backup plan.
Well, it all comes down to not settling. And you're at a place
Yeah.
where that is not something you're going to do. Because you're living from your truth. And you know what feels right and what doesn't feel right.
Yeah.
It's very easy to assess now.
And so I logged on to a dating website this morning, right? And there's this girl on there who I dated a long time ago. And she's like, dude, how come you're so amazing? Like everything I see about you is so amazing, but with me, you're not.
Ooh.
And I was like,
interesting.
shit. So I called her, right?
Interesting.
And I was like, what exactly does this mean? And we have this dialogue about just, when you were with me that one night, you were kind of like off or whatever. And I was like, well, yeah, I'm a human being. Like, just because, like, I'm nowhere near perfect. Dude, I screw up stuff all the time.
Yeah.
Right? But I said I'm also real.
Yeah. but
Especially
plus,
now.
Plus there's chemistry. I mean,
Yeah,
maybe
there's
you're
all
not
kinds of
feeling it
stuff.
with her.
And there was no excuse to it, but I was really curious, like, what made her say that?
Yeah.
Because she's like, I've seen some of the stuff you and Shelly do, and, you guys have this, like, it's about dating, and it's about red flags and whatever, and she's like, you weren't, like, the best date. And I was like, of course I wasn't. Like, how could, what does everybody run at 100% every day? No,
Yeah.
they don't. So it was this really funny dialogue, and we actually had a good conversation. It was really cool.
Yeah.
And I think that dialogue after the fact is healthy.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But it was so interesting that she reached out, like on a dating app. And
That's
she's like, man,
awesome.
your profile looks
Yeah.
awesome, but you were kind of a dick when I met you. And I was
Yeah,
like, oh,
I
really?
love
Well,
that.
let's talk.
I
You know what I
love
mean?
that.
It was cool. So that was interesting too. But then also that like goes back to not giving a fuck. Another example with dating where I'm not scared to be vulnerable.
What's cool about that is you weren't defensive.
No, I don't.
You didn't
And that's the other thing too, is it takes away that pride, like that defense, right? Like, why would you be mad? Like, I don't care what she thinks. I appreciate her opinion and I'll listen to it, but it doesn't impact my world.
Sure. Sure. You're not going to run around all day thinking, oh, somebody thought I wasn't cool.
Right. Yeah. Right. And here's the other thing with that too, is I always held in emotions, and I always, like, if something bothered me, I'd be like, oh, I don't want to, like, make anybody mad or, like, create conflict. So I held it in. And now I'm like, no, dude, that's bullshit.
Yeah.
Or if somebody's like, hey, I want you to be my boyfriend, I'm like, no, I'm not doing that. Yeah. Whereas before I'd be like, well, I don't want to hurt your feelings. Yeah. I'm like, no, I'm not going to be, no, just being completely, totally honest. Like, I told you about a situation I had where, like, I got my feelings hurt. So I like responded, and I was like totally honest and open about, like, man, that hurt me. And that dialogue and that back and forth, that was done after that. Now I don't have to carry it.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right.
It's like almost if you react to situations and you're not scared of the outcome, and you're not scared to be alone, you're not scared to be part of a group that probably isn't right for you anyways, it makes the process faster.
Well, and if you also are responding not with some emotionally charged answer, not like, oh, you go crazy on somebody like some people do.
Right. Right. Well, that's emotional sobriety. Right. That's a whole nother thing.
Right.
With not giving a fuck.
You're neutral.
Yeah. So then you don't need to get mad because you're not lying.
It is,
and you're not lying about who you are. Right. There's just so many things that go into that, and that book, right? The Art of Not Giving a Fuck. When you read it and you actually apply it to some stuff, actually apply it to everything, it's so powerful. It's like life-changing almost, right?
It's liberating.
It is. And like Robin said today, she's like, wow, man, that's like so freeing. It gives you freedom.
It does.
And it does give you freedom, but it's not in a bad way. It's not a destructive way, right? It's just being truthful.
Well, and what's interesting is when you think about it from the perspective of so many people who get out of high school, go to the college their parents want them to go chase the job their parents want them to chase because they say, oh, you should definitely be a engineer or a doctor or whatever it is. They don't have an interest in that. And then 5 years into it, they're like, sucks, I hate this. I shouldn't have done it in the first place.
Yeah,
but they're doing all those things that they believe that they should do because of living that perception their parents told them, or people around them, people in their group, whatever it is. Yeah. It's just the idea that there's so many ways that we abandon our own ideals and our own values to make other people happy.
And think if you had a dialogue, right? I think our first dialogue was very truthful.
Yeah.
I think that was one of the first examples of like a true dialogue that was based, like we weren't scared to say what we thought.
No, we had a great conversation.
That was pretty good,
first conversation, right? Yeah.
And like starting off with that, or your example about like, hey, if I went to my son and I was like, hey, dude, I want you to go to medical school. And he's like, nah, Dad, I really don't want to. Or he's like, oh, I want my dad's approval, so I'm going to go. Well, what a effed up life that's going to be.
Yeah.
Versus if you just say what you want, even if you change your mind, if you just say what you want, God, it just shrinks that process down to right now, right? You don't have to wait 10 years down the road and be in therapy and be like, oh yeah, my dad made me go to medical school.
Yeah, or wake up one day and
just say
figure out
what
that
you
you're
want.
Incredibly depressed or have high anxiety because you every day wake up and don't want to do what you're doing and
Right. Or the example you used earlier, like the sexual stuff. Like if you want to be monogamous or poly whatever, or whatever ethical cheating thing is or whatever it is, go do it. But say it.
Right.
Be like, hey man, I don't want to be monogamous. Like I'm cool. Like you can be my primary person, but I want to go like sleep with other people. If you say that like right away, people can make a decision. You don't like build up a relationship and then let them know 6 months down the road. That's bullshit. That's like the most hurtful thing on the planet instead of just telling somebody the truth. That's that not giving a fuck thing, dude. If you're that person, then be that person all the time. Like, don't hide it. Why would you hide it? There's nothing wrong with it.
Well,
Go do it.
Whether we're talking relationships or following career choices, whatever it is, there's no cookie cutter for everyone. If there was one cookie cutter for everything, we'd all be doing the same job. We'd all be dating in the same type of relationship, dating the same kind of That's not how life is.
But you kind of think that's how it's supposed to be, right?
Right.
And here's the other thing, too. Like, here's a perfect example of not giving a fuck. Like we could pull up Facebook right now, and tell me if I'm full of shit, because Rock and Robin will always tell me, and so will you. All right, so this is my theory. Listen. So, and we'll probably get comments saying something too, but.
No doubt.
So Facebook. Pick a woman on Facebook that says single. There is not a fucking dude in any picture on her whole entire profile. They're all gone. 90% of the time, that's a fact. So then I look and I'm like, okay, so you go out with all these girls and you have all this fun and you're taking videos of yourself at the bar and you have these great pictures with your friends and there's not one dude in one picture.
Wow.
For months and months at a time. Like,
wow.
How can that be? That's a lie.
Well, it's a very carefully curated profile.
Very carefully curated profile. Or you date somebody and then you delete like the pictures of them. I've done that. Right? Because you don't want somebody to know, like, oh my God, I just dated this person. Oh, you've only been in a relationship for a couple weeks, right? So you're like hiding what's really going on in your life.
Right.
And I noticed I do it too. And that's how I started noticing it. I'm like, wow, I don't really have a whole bunch of pictures of women on my Facebook or my, Instagram. I don't really post things like with personal stuff too much other than like, hydrofoils and flying on a flyboard and surfing. But
actually, you should add an EMT to your list of 5 and make it 6. You need to date an EMT because you've been hurt so many times.
I need a doctor. But no, you see my point though?
Yeah.
Like, that's not being truthful. Like, just be who you are. Like, who cares? Oh, because somebody might assume like, oh, you have a girlfriend, so then you might not have an opportunity to meet some dude or some girl.
Right.
Because when I really break it down, I really think about it, I'm giving a fuck because I'm not doing what I'm doing. Right?
Right.
Like, I had a whole bunch of people on the dock the other day, and there was girls and guys and having a great time and, all different demographics and whatever. We were having a blast. And I was like, oh, I could take a picture of it and post it on Facebook. And then I'm like, but why? Like, for ego? Like, to show people like I have friends? Like, who gives a shit? But then like, I thought even further and I was like, oh, but, if I'm dating somebody and they see all these other girls there on the dock, then they might think. And then I was like, who gives a shit? If you want to post it, post it.
Do you want to date somebody who cares? There's their question.
Well, or do you want to date somebody that would trust you enough to be like, hey, are you, interested in those girls? And I'd be like, maybe not those girls, but I'm interested in other girls because I'm dating right now.
Right.
Right?
Right.
And then it takes away all the BS. And it creates that dialogue of trust. That actually creates trust. It doesn't take it away.
Sure.
So that's my point. Like, and when you look at stuff, like I just started looking, like some of my friends, some of my girls that I'm friends with, I'm like, there's not, like, why not just be really you? Like, if you're out having a great time, like, really, there's not one other dude around? That's weird. Isn't it weird?
I've never paid attention to it.
I do. What do you think?
Well, if I'm in a relationship with somebody, I'm not posting pictures of me and them because I'm a public figure, so I try to keep that private. I don't want people infiltrating that. But
same.
I do have men.
I'm not talking about us.
No,
I'm
same.
talking about in general, yeah.
Yeah, but I kind of understand that because you're putting it out there that you are single, but you're probably in a relationship and you're looking for the bigger, better deal.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that's why.
But if you're looking for a bigger, better deal, then, you know what I'm saying? I don't know. That was just something I noticed.
Why can't you just be honest about it?
Yeah.
Like you said.
Like, I could put single on mine and be like, I'd even put single looking for the bigger, better deal. Right? Like, I'm dating.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Or instead of having single, put dating.
I don't think that's an option on Facebook.
It's not. That's my point. You're like single.
Yeah, but it says,
or a
then it says
or you're married.
interested in, which
Interested
says,
in men
and
or
that's
women
kind of
or
like,
both or
that's kind
whatever.
of like the unspoken dating, I would say, on Facebook.
That was just like one of my like ahas the other day.
Yeah.
That I had, when I was thinking through that, right? Because there's always this dynamic as not giving a fuck. Like, is there ego based in my decision? Because a lot of my decisions were based on ego. A lot of them were, right? And then when you take that away, you're like, okay, why did I really do that? Then you ask yourself why again and why again, like our show about why. Then it really breaks it down to like, okay, like what's really going on here? You know what I'm saying?
I don't know. I guess I always just come from that place of intuition. I never step back and like pause and do that.
I'm actually thinking about
Maybe
it
I'm
now.
missing a whole
because
opportunity.
if the radar goes off, I'm like, oh, I wonder what this is about. Like, I'll dig into it a little bit and kind of see. And I'm not like calling anybody out. I'm not saying it's wrong. I'm just saying it's noticeable.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Or like you see, I don't know. Like a friend of mine started dating somebody, and he digs her, like super digs her.
Cool.
So he changed his profile picture to her, and he changed like he's posting things and tagging her, but then she's not like posting things and tagging him.
Uh-huh.
So I look at that and I make the assumption and the judgment, which are both bad, that she's not into him as much as he is in her. Right? Like, but that's what social media is. It's like this show
Yeah.
for everybody to start
Well, people have
making
different
judgments and stuff.
social footprint behaviors too, I
Yeah.
think.
It's kind of
They,
weird.
they see things differently. Some people put a lot more value in it.
Yeah.
And definitely the validation factor is higher for some people,
Yeah.
you know?
Like for me, if I were to post with me and a gal, it would be like a serious deal.
Uh-huh.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Wouldn't you? Like if you made your profile picture like you and a guy,
Oh, no, that would be like very, very serious.
right?
Yeah.
Like that's a big deal.
Yeah.
For me, it's a big deal.
Yeah.
So if I did that, it'd be like, hey, you're my girlfriend, you're my partner, like you
Yes.
have me.
That would be like, yes,
and I wouldn't
absolutely.
hide it from anyone.
No, that
Yeah.
would be very serious.
Right?
Yeah, because I'm thinking back to my past relationship and when I did that, and it was definitely a long time
It's a
into
serious
it.
deal.
Yeah,
So then maybe that's the answer. Maybe like nobody's doing that, even having pictures on Facebook with the opposite sex because it's nothing serious in their life. So they are really looking.
yeah, yeah.
Maybe that's the truth.
Maybe that's it.
Right?
Yeah,
So maybe that's like I don't give a fuck. Like here I am.
yeah.
Here's what I'm doing, and I don't give a shit about anybody else enough to put them in a picture.
Uh-huh. Maybe.
Maybe, yeah. Maybe so we just talked through that.
Yeah.
But still, like this not giving a fuck thing. Like if I'm somewhere and I take a picture, I don't need to select the picture of who's in it.
No. No, and if you're thinking about that as far as like what would some future girlfriend think, then that's the wrong girl,
Right.
right?
Because they should know that you've dated other people.
Sure.
And that's how you got to where you are now, and that's how you know what you want.
Or somebody's going to
because
ask
you
you.
dated other people.
Right. Or
Right.
if somebody's going to ask you a bunch of questions, then that's a jealous person. You don't want her either.
Or maybe somebody that's curious too, right?
Well, yeah, depending on how it goes, sure.
Well, you know more about that than I do.
Yeah.
You have experience. Would that be like a jealous person?
Well, possibly.
So you just
Possibly.
dive deeper, ask more questions?
Yeah. Yeah.
That's cool.
I'm just depending on which way it goes. Yeah.
Well, that was one of the things too that we did. I actually wrote that show down. I think I did. Yeah, jealousy. If you're jealous, then like there's something missing, because jealousy, I think, is somewhat attached to intuition. Right? Like if like something's bothering me, I'm jealous about something, I feel insecure about something, and yes, it can be about me,
But no, it's definitely about me if I'm jealous.
but it's also like an intuition. Like maybe you're not telling me the truth. Like maybe I'm jealous of this person because I don't know the real situation.
True.
Because you don't feel comfortable telling me the truth because
True.
you give a fuck.
Right. But if I'm jealous, then there's something missing in myself. It's a
Right.
reflection of myself that is setting off my fear alarm,
Right. Right.
because it's the fear of losing you.
Or you're seeing also a reflection of yourself in the mirror, basically, with this other person.
Yeah.
And it's scary too.
Yeah. Or the
Yeah.
fear of losing my partner to this other person because this person has something that I want
So it's
to
insecurity.
be or
basically.
have. Mm-hmm.
I agree with that.
Mm-hmm.
I agree with that. But that goes back to, again, if you don't give a fuck, then that doesn't matter.
Well, or maybe you're in an unstable relationship too,
True.
and you know it's slipping away, and then
But-
you
but-
see behavior in your partner.
But if you're healthy, you won't let yourself be in an unstable relationship.
Right, but I'm
It's
just
not
saying that's what
acceptable.
the jealousy is doing, is
Yeah.
triggering.
That makes sense.
Yeah, that it's not healthy.
No,
It's shining a light on it.
right?
Right.
It's shining a light on the issue. It's like the
Mhm.
red flag.
Mm-hmm.
That's one of the red flags.
Red flag on a charging bull.
Yep. I
The bull's
agree.
already charging.
So what else? I mean, when we talk about the inside matching the outside, we just use a whole bunch of examples, and most of them were out dating.
Mm-hmm.
But there's also, we relate that to your career.
Mhm.
We relate that to your family. We
Mhm.
relate that to so many different things, right?
Mhm.
Like there's conflict or potential conflict everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
But a lot of times the conflict can be associated to anger, lack of communication, not being truthful, that kind of stuff,
Mhm.
right? And that's where I think it's key for to know who you are, right? Not identify yourself with a situation or a thing or a career, but be like, hey, here's who I am. That's that question. I can't remember the movie, but like, no, I'm asking you who you are. Like, who are you? Not what you do, but who are you,
Right,
right?
right.
And to answer that with like an actual, you know what I mean, character, personality,
Mhm.
core value answer.
So I've always thought of that from the perspective, and I know it sounds morbid, of an obituary. Because and I don't know why, I was always kind of obsessed with obituaries. But because Robin, she gets me, because you look at obituaries and it says, you know, so-and-so died, blah, 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 whatever the date. And, you know, he was a veteran and he retired from such and that kind of stuff.
That's what he did, though.
Exactly. And I remember when I wrote my husband's and I wrote this thing, and when I wrote my mom's, I wrote that. And it was all about who they were and what they valued and, you know, what made them happy and, you know, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
And just when I would read those, it would make me sad, thinking like, when someone's life is over, is that all there is just like a list of where they retired and who they gave money to? Is it charitable contributions? Like, that's it?
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
So that's when I decided, no, I'm going to live my life as a hell yes and be this person who's so much more than what I do.
Right.
And it was just very impactful.
Well, like philanthropy and, you know, giving back and sharing information and being vulnerable. And those are like huge, huge things, right? And I think everybody in this floor is the same. Not the same exactly, but you know what I'm saying? Like the core values resemble or at least are compatible because, you know, you mesh together because you believe the same type of shit, right? So, but I think also to get there, you have to have that like not giving a fuck attitude because you're not scared to be vulnerable. You're not scared to be who you really are. Yeah. Right?
Yeah, we're all comfortable with our truth.
Yeah, I think so.
I think
more so now than ever, though. Right?
Yes.
Like for me, this is like a new thing for me. I think that's what the dating thing is about too, because I'm actually saying exactly what I fucking want for once, and I'm not scared to say no, and I'm not, you know what I mean? Like all those things, and I'm totally fine being by myself. So then it changes everything. Now I'm like, shit.
Well, it's like for the first time you understand your happiness, your values are more important than making someone else happy. So you're not abandoning yourself.
Right.
And good for you.
Right. And it's not about me necessarily. I mean, that is about me, but it's not, the concept of this isn't about me. The concept is about like, hey, here's what it looks like. Like, here's where it can go after you do work and you continue to do work, right? You actually can be who you really are, and that's okay. And if somebody doesn't like it, that's okay too.
Right.
It doesn't mean you're bad and they're good.
You're not for
There's
everybody.
No judgment.
They're not all for you. You're
right.
not all. You're
and
not
that's
for
totally
them.
cool.
Yeah.
And even sometimes friends, right?
Right.
Like I think sometimes it's hard for married couples to be hanging out with single people because your lifestyles are somewhat different, right? Like if I'm hanging out with a married couple and I meet a girl out, then I would be talking to that girl too, and maybe I'd bring her in the group and we'd hang out and dance or have fun or whatever, right? And that might be like weird for a married couple, or threatening maybe. I don't know, but there's that dynamic too, right? Like that's why a lot of times single people hang out with single people and married people hang out with married people,
right?
Right? Because it's a different thing going on. So that's also like an understanding too, like not you know, judging somebody for how they're behaving or whatever, and just letting them be them, right? Does that make sense?
Yeah.
I'm learning all this shit as we go.
I love it.
It's fun, right?
Good. It's quite an education.
Yeah. Oh yeah. So that goes back to the education that we talked about, you know, how we got to here. How do you get to here? Because, I mean, it's not like, you know, whatever. I mean, we're both over 50. So if I compared who I was at 40 to who I am now, like, how would I change the person I was at 40? Like, how would I not give a fuck at 40? What's different?
Everything.
I know, but I mean, like...
Your life circumstances, everything.
But how come we can't... Like, for me, my biggest question about life is, like, how come I couldn't have these tools when I was 40 or 30?
You weren't ready.
You weren't ready.
Well, you weren't ready, but you could... Don't you think you could teach it? Like, couldn't you give people some of this shit?
Enlightenment, it's like...
Isn't that what the show's for?
It's like someone who is with somebody and they want them to stop drinking or smoking or want them to stop whatever. Nobody's going to change until they're ready. And they can hear something or watch something or listen until they're ready, or diet or whatever it is, you know, or healthy lifestyle. But until someone's ready and it's their idea and it's something that means something to them, there's not going to be a change. So when you were ready is when you started your journey.
That's a great point.
Right?
You know, the other thing about... You made me think of something when you said that. The other thing about not giving a fuck is not trying to help people.
Trying to save them? trying to change them.
Right. If somebody asks for
It's
help,
not your job.
you help them.
Yep.
But if people don't ask for help, you're not pushing into their shit to try and make things better or different, right? And when you said that, it made me realize, like, our purpose program, we're not pushing. We're saying, hey, here's a program. If you want help and you want a job and a stepping stone to start building your life back, like, here's the program. But we're not out, like, hunting people.
Right.
We're just letting people know that this exists. But you have to make the choice, and you have to make the effort. We're not going to come and fucking hold your hand.
Right.
That's the difference.
It's the same
That's
thing.
The key.
It's the same thing with me coaching. I've had people tell me that they want me to coach their daughter, coach their sister, or but until that person reaches out, I'm not going to coach them.
You can't.
Right.
Yeah, you can't.
It's not going to work.
You can't do it, right?
No.
Yeah, it's and that was like, that's a self-confidence thing. That's a self-esteem thing. That's a not giving a fuck thing. That's a big deal. And when you start realizing that, your efforts are, I won't say, God, it's not rewarded, but it's different. I remember, and I talked about this a long time ago, I was sitting with a counselor and I was like, God, this must be so draining. And she's like, no, it's not actually. Because the people I work with, I qualify those people, and I only work with people that want to help themselves.
Yep.
I only work with people that want to do the work. And then therefore, it's not draining to me. It's rewarding to me, and it fills me up. And that's the difference.
It's like watching people walk into a room and turn the light on,
Right.
instead of someone sitting in a dark room and struggle to find the light.
Exactly. And I had that experience recently. Like, I was asked to go and help, and I did. And that person didn't want to do anything about it. They didn't take any action. So then I'm like,
Yeah.
I'm out. Like, you have to make the choice. Otherwise, I'm going to beat my head against the wall. And the other thing, too, is, like, if you make the choice to help yourself, then you're grateful for people that help you.
Right.
If you're just, like, bouncing around doing your thing, being a victim, then you're not grateful. Like, you're not appreciative. It doesn't do anything for you, right? Like, you don't see progress.
Well, it's not our job, and I don't mean mine, yours, but just anyone's collectively. It's not our job to save other people. And it's not our responsibility. And beyond that, it's not possible to save other people if they're not ready. Back to the being ready, right?
I agree. Yeah, I totally agree.
So I think a lot of people in relationships spend their time, they see maybe a weakness, or they see something that is bothering them. They project that on the other person as something that needs saved, or maybe they're a saver or a fixer, and they spend their time, years maybe, trying to save the other person. And really what they need to do is just look within and realize, hey, I should probably work on myself, instead of spending all this time trying to save the person that doesn't need saved or doesn't want saved, or maybe that it's just something that's not even real, and it's just so I can stay busy over here and not look at myself.
Right.
It's fascinating.
It's super cool, yeah. And that once the self-awareness that I see in people, like the higher level of self-awareness they have, the more, I want to say aware, but the more, like, interactive they are.
Yes.
The more confident they are. The more, like, when you start to understand and accept who you are, then that makes you super confident. And it makes you very, not attractive in, like, a sexual way, like I want to date you way, but attractive as a person, like, you want around you, because that energy brings interest and intellect and truth and,
Sure.
you know what I'm saying, dialogue and depth and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Like, that's a cool thing.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I know we say, and that's a vulgar way to say it or whatever, but it's true. Like, that book and that concept is powerful. That's a huge thing.
Right.
Huge.
Right.
And then that, one last thing I'll say, and then I'll let you finish this up, but not let you, you can finish this up. You don't need permission. Anyways, so the not giving a
He's
fuck
so
thing.
sensitive today.
Yeah, I'm
isn't he?
sensitive today. The not giving a fuck thing is, when you talk about, like, being true to who you are with everything you do, right?
Yeah.
Like, I'm so, I guess, playful and adventurous. I kind of forgot. Like, I've always been a goofball, but, like, I want to, like, just do everything now. I want to jump out of airplanes. I want to go canyoneering. I want to go rappelling. I want to go, like, ride my dirt bike. I want to, hey, there's a hydrofoil.
It's called living life.
Yeah.
Yeah, like, literally, I swear to
Feeling
you.
alive. Yeah.
Yep.
This guy rides by on a hydrofoil by the dock this weekend. We're like, hey, come over here. And he's like, what? And we're like, dude, can we rent that from you? And he's like, no. So we talked him into letting us ride it, right?
Yeah.
It was so cool. And then we flew him on the flyboard and we took him but it was super, super cool. They're like, hey, you
Yeah.
know, and you wouldn't normally do that, but it was just
Really?
fun. Well, I would, but
Yeah, I would too.
but that like concept, that like playful concept, that's who I really am, and never to hide that, right?
Right.
So back to being real and not giving a fuck. That brings me to, you know, I hate to keep going back to the dating thing, but that's a good example. Is that if you were there and you're with somebody that's like, oh, you know, I don't really want to surf, or I don't want to go down the slide, or I don't want to go camping, or I don't want to try, like, I don't know, swing dancing or whatever it is, then that's not a person for me. Right?
It's good
But
you know.
before, I'd have been like, okay, cool. Then I guess you could go do your thing and I'll go do my thing, which is fine too. But you can't say no to every single adventurous thing, because then
Right.
I won't be authentic to who I am.
Right.
Right? Does that make sense?
No, you know the difference now.
Well, yeah. But the funny thing is you always did. You
Yes.
just didn't have,
You stifled it.
right. You just didn't have the confidence to frickin' call it out. Or you'd call it out in
It was
anger,
fear.
or toxic relationships, or whatever it is.
Passive aggressive.
Passive aggressive, yep. Or you're going to create a fight so you don't have to do it, or
Right.
whatever. But just that true transparency, there's no argument, there's no conflict.
Right.
There's no conflict.
Right.
'Cause there's no bullshit.
No, it's just honesty.
Isn't that amazing?
It's pretty cool.
All right, what do you got? Is that it?
No, I think that's good. I just think the biggest thing with the not giving a fuck, subtle art of not giving a fuck, book as the book's called, is that people misunderstand, and if they really look within and prioritize and understand themselves enough to know what really matters, because that's what it's about. It's what matters, and then what doesn't matter, which is the periphery stuff, people's opinions, you know, just the. Obviously, you want to make sure that people who are important in your life are valued. But if it's all that stuff, you know, like you're talking about the Facebook stuff and girls who you don't want to see, and do you care about their opinion, that kind of thing. So when you get to what matters and what doesn't matter, the what doesn't matter stuff that's bogging you down with anxiety and depression and things that are you're overthinking and all that stuff, that's the not give a fuck section of life, right? So that's the difference.
Or letting it go. See, that's the thing. I do have one more thing to say.
Okay.
Sorry.
I'm not
That's
surprised.
the thing, like, the not giving a fuck part is, like, there's no win or lose.
No.
Like, you know, you have an interaction with somebody or whatever, and somehow, some way, like, there's so many people that think that you got to win. And if you don't win, then you lost. But it's not. It's just a dialogue, right?
Right.
Or you know, you go out on a date, like we said, and the person doesn't want to hang out with you that way. It's not like a romantic connection. Somehow people think they lost something. But in reality, you gained. Like, that's a great interaction. They crossed your path for a reason.
Or
and
even
it's a great interaction.
even after a breakup, same thing.
Yeah, like you think you lost something, but that's actually the start of something too. And don't get me wrong. Like, of course it hurts. Of course it's lost.
Yes.
Of course it's a
Yes.
change in life. Of course you have to process it.
You have to go through all of
and that's part of being healthy too. But it's that mindset and that choice, the way you think about things, right?
Yeah.
So you look at it from like oh my God, that sucks that didn't work out. And I was in love, or I wasn't in love, or whatever. I cared about that person, whatever it is. And that sucks. But guess what? We can move on.
Yeah, it's the now
and
what.
grow and be better and look forward to
What
the
you
future.
learn from it.
Then it goes back to all the unhealthy shit, like, oh,
Sure.
you know, I don't like change and I'm jealous and blah, 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 and whatever. But
Yeah.
but then you also have to look at yourself too in that time. Like, okay, what could I have done better?
Or first.
What
and
was this really
foremost.
about? Was this a duplicate of the relationship I had before that I didn't heal from? Did I just unpack my baggage with another person? That kind of shit.
Sure.
Right? And that's where I think everything changes. That's like that whole knot.
Yeah.
Anyways,
Agree.
these are concepts
Are you
that I
done?
have.
Are you done not giving a fuck?
I think I'm done. I'm done with it.
Okay.
I'm done with it. So
Perfect.
everybody, that's Shelly Netco and Scott Freymuller. That's me, right? Because
Right.
some people don't know.
Yeah.
And we're done. We're done with this one. So just one last thing when we talk about these. This isn't the point of like being vulgar. This isn't us saying that this is the way life should be or anything like that. This is just opinion. We're sharing information.
Right.
We're always sharing information. So thanks for watching. Take care. Have a great day, and we'll be back soon.